Hello, YouTube. Do you like scary movies? This is what I get for doing it without the voice modifier. But don't worry, I am not Ghostface, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about the return of one of the greatest slasher franchises ever. This is my review of 2022's Scream. 25 years after a streak of brutal murders shocked the quiet town of Woodsboro, a new killer has donned the Ghostface mask and begins targeting a group of teenagers in an attempt to resurrect the secrets of the town's deadly past. Now, before I properly start with my review for the new Scream, I want to know your thoughts on it. If you're excited, if you've seen it already, leave your thoughts on the franchise for Friday when I upload my ranking of all 5 Scream movies. But if you like movies and TV, this is the place to be, so make sure you consider clicking that subscribe button so you don't miss any future conversation on your favorite movies and TV. For context, I was never the most hardcore fan of Scream movies. It just was never my franchise, if that makes any sense. But I do really enjoy the original. It's a very good movie. I had the chance to see it back in theaters this past Halloween, and there's a review for it right up here. But I also love Ready or Not. So I was excited going into this because I trust the directors and the people behind this film to bring back this franchise. And they brought it back with a reinvigorated sense of freshness. This film is the most clever of the Scream films since the original. Perhaps equally as clever. There's just so many new layers added to the meta narrative of this franchise that while it adds new layers to the whole thing, it keeps building on what came before, but it also carries the weight of the history of Woodsboro, of every single one of the past movies, on what these characters, the legacy characters in particular, obviously went through. And Courteney Cox, David Arquette, and Neve Campbell are at their all-time best on this. The performances are really strong, and there's a grounded emotion and a link, obviously, between all these characters that straightens the narrative and why they are brought back once again. But perhaps more importantly, the new characters, who obviously have to prove themselves, are also a really nice addition with a dynamic that mirrors the original, but the way they poke fun at their very presence in this film, at the very existence of this film, is what I love about the sense of humor of Scream, and what I love that the directors brought from their kind of sense of humor from Ready or Not. And that mixed into this really makes it shine. It's clever, it's very witty. There are moments where I laughed out loud, and I wasn't the only one laughing out loud. It's very punchy, and it's also brutal. This is probably the most violent of the Scream movies. The kills are great, and as a slasher, it works great. The scares work, and also they're self-aware enough to play with the horror stereotypes that you expect. Sometimes they will milk a jump scare or when a jump scare is coming to the point where you lose complete track of when it's coming. And I think the film does such clever things in that sense. I really admire the direction in this one. Going back a little bit to the emotion that I talked about that was present with the legacy characters, it's also present at the core of the narrative on this one with the new characters, with Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega, who play sisters. There are new leads. They're the ones that are the driving force of this film, and I found their relationship extremely compelling, complex, and it plays within the history of this franchise in really interesting ways, where again it adds new twists on how things play out and adds to the cleverness and how this film builds on what came before, how it adds onto itself with that weight, with that history that is important for proceedings to happen in this one, obviously. The way the film structurally plays out, it reminded me of a certain other sequel to a big franchise that I'll talk about in my ranking video, where we will talk spoilers on that one, not right now. Mixed in with the self-awareness of the Scream movies just makes it very refreshing. The self-awareness, however, the meta references can be a bit too much at times, and this leads me into my drawbacks. The meta-ness of this film, it's funny, and then they make another reference, it's funny, and then it keeps being funny, okay, still funny, and now you're overstaying your welcome. And when you're going into the third act, mostly they focus on the horror aspect and on the slasher aspect. But the film can be a bit too self-indulgent in its own cleverness. It's a very clever movie, and it knows it. It may know it to a fault, I feel. And if you know my personal feelings towards the Scream franchise as a whole, this issue will be weird to you, but let me explain. Where the Scream movies have always been part slasher, part murder mystery. I usually think the murder mystery is the most intriguing part of these films, and not so much as a slasher. Well, this new Scream changed that, where I feel as a slasher, it's so effective, and it keeps that tension and suspense up so well, where there are clear stakes, so you're not really sure who's going to die, and the film acknowledges that as a wink to the audience in such an interesting way, and it plays out in such interesting ways. But the murder mystery was lacking for me, because personally, I saw it coming a mile away. Not going to get into it now, but that's one of the issues that I had with this film, was that it lacked that suspense of who is it. I knew who it was from the beginning. So that part was never effective throughout the entire runtime of the film. My last issue really is the smallest of the issues, but the dialogue can be a bit rough. Particularly in the beginning. I think it quickly got better as we move on to second and third act. But in the first act, as it's setting up everything, it's questionable at points. It's just too forward, too in your face about itself a bit. The new Scream is a slasher for the ages. Violently brutal, clever humor, punchy with its commentary on franchises, and just overall witty. It has a really nice balance of carrying the history of itself while adding new layers into itself. Hardcore fans are in for a treat with this one. I feel it's very compelling on a character level, but just reinvigorating on a narrative stand. I'm giving Scream a B. And those are my thoughts on the new Scream. What did you think about it? Did you like it less than me? Did you like it more? Anything and everything down there in the comments below. Start the conversation. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my channel members, Bruna and Stuart, for making this video possible. Check the link in the description to see if becoming a member interests you, and come back on Friday when we rank all 5 Scream movies. Thank you so much for watching. You are the best, and until the next one, love each other and love the movies.